more of a peek in the back person.
Well, I'll tell you, what inspired this? I was thinking, I was reading this article. So you're gonna have to sit further up front, Mary Lou. Come on. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now, I was reading this article in the Times about, and you've probably heard this term too, about the silver tsunami. Apparently, we're like a pioneer generation. I mean, there's always been old people, but there hadn't been quite so many old people all alive at the same time, moving forward as a block. And so I started thinking about all the poets that were kind of the young Turks and the up and coming poets when I was in college and graduate school. People like that were just starting to make their name in the New Yorker and the New York Review of Books and putting out their first anthology. And I thought to myself, people like W.S. Merwin and William Stafford and Linda Paston. And I'm thinking, gee, I wonder if they're all getting old too, right? So what do poets think about when they're getting old? Because when they were young, they wrote about the things that we all cared about when we were young. And I think when they're old, they're going to be writing about the things they care about when we're old. And so I checked out a lot of them, the ones that were my favorites. And in fact, they are writing about the same things that we're thinking about now, about thinking about some of the stuff, thinking about death, thinking about getting old, wondering what it's going to be like to die, but also thinking about all the neat memories you've got and sharing them with friends and thinking about how cool your grandchildren are and and being really curious about what it's going to be like when you're dead. So they're thinking about the same thing we're thinking about. They just say it a lot better than we do. So well, I thought I would read you some of the really the poets who have been around for a long time. And I'll tell you, most of these have been National Book Award winners and poet laureates of the country. And I mean, they're not shoddy poets. But they're all poets now who are at least 75 and up. And a couple of them, unfortunately, died in the last year or two. This is just to start out is a poem by Linda Paston. I don't know if you know her. She was a poet laureate in 1991. And she lived her whole life in New York. That she did die last year, unfortunately, because she's a great poet. This is just an introduction. It has nothing to do with old age per se, but it's called A Glass of Cold Water. Poetry is not a code to be broken, but a way of seeing with the eyes shut, of short-circuiting the usual connections until a lioness and a knee become the same thing. Though not a cure, it can console, the way cool sheets console the dying flesh, the way a glass of cold water can be a way station on the unswerving road to thirst. So poetry is not a code to be broken. When I was teaching poetry, my kids would say, well, what does that poem mean? And I would say, well, it means exactly what it says. There's no secret code to it. I'll read you one more about Linda Paston just because I like her so much. She's laughing about stereotypes about Jews in this one, but also having fun with it. She herself is Jewish, and she's using the image of the Cossacks. If you remember your history, the Cossacks were the groups the Russian used to purge the Pale during some of the pogroms of the 19th and early 20th century. So she calls this poem The Cossacks. For Jews, the Cossacks are always coming. Therefore, I think the sunspot on my arm is melanoma. Therefore, I celebrate New Year's Eve by counting my annual dead. My mother, when she was dying, spoke to her visitors of books and travel, displaying serenity as a form of manners, though I could tell the difference. But when I watched you planning for a life you knew you'd never have, I couldn't explain your genuine smile in the face of disaster. Was it denial laced with acceptance? Or was it generations of being English? Bronte's Lucy in Villette, living as if no fire raged beneath her dun-colored dress. I want to live the way you did, preparing for next year's famine with wine and music as if it were a 10-course banquet. But listen, I know those are hoofbeats on the frosty air. And W.S. Merwin, National Book Award, couple of Pulitzers. I mean, wow. This is called Dew Light, as in D-E-W, dew. Now, in the blessed days of more and less, when the news about time is that each day there is less of it, I know none of that as I walk out through the early garden. Only the day and I are here, with no before or after, and the dew looks up without a number or an age.
That's great.
Yeah. Merwin is so cool. He lives in Hawaii now, and he started a conservancy to sort of protect the forest on the Hawaiian Islands. He wrote this wonderful book one time about this poem about the forest taking over everything. Billy Collins. I've read some of his stuff before, I think, to you. He's one of my top favorite poets. Of course, he was a poet laureate. They 2001. He's still alive. He's in his late 80s. He's a professor emeritus at Lehman College in New York. He still holds poetry writing workshops. May he last until many more years. He's got a sense of humor that's really kind of wonderful and strange. It's called Days. Each one is a gift, no doubt, mysteriously placed in your waking hand or set upon your forehead moments before you open your eyes.
You muted it. It's muted. You're muted, Beth. She must have pressed something.
Hold on, Beth. I'm fixing it.
Hey, you're
All right, thank you. I'm sorry for the folks on Zoom. We figured out how to unmute this. It's a new speaker. Ryan. She was, of course, poet laureate in 2010, born in 1945, living in California now, I believe. Um, And this is kind of an interesting take on on an old cliche that she turns on its head. She calls this the ticket. This is the ticket I failed to spend. It is still in my pocket at the fair's end. It is not only on suffering or grief or even boredom, of which we are offered more than enough. Spend all your joy tickets down too. Louise Gluck. She actually won the Nobel Prize for Poetry in 2020. She has got this wonderful book that her latest book of poetry. You should check it out if you like poetry. Louise Gluck is GLU with a little umlaut CK. She wrote it about going to a CCRC because her sister was in one, and she would go visit and talk to the people there. And some of them are really kind of sad, and some of them are funny. And the image I keep remembering is she says she's sitting outside in the hallway with her sister, and the nurse comes by and is really cheered up because she thinks they're hydrating and drinking water, and she doesn't know that it's straight gin in both our glasses. So she knows. Anyway, this is a poem called "The Night Migrations." This is the moment when you see again the red berries of the mountain ash, and in the dark sky, the birds' night migrations. It grieves me. It grieves me to think the dead won't see them. These things we depend on, they disappear. What will the soul do for solace then? I tell myself, maybe it won't need these pleasures anymore. Maybe just not being is simply enough, hard as that is to imagine. Okay. Billy Collins again. Again, this is the poem when he's old, but he's taking a different look. It's called Today. If ever there was a spring day so perfect, so uplifted by a warm, intermittent breeze that have made you want to throw open all the windows in the house and unlatch the door to the canary's cage, indeed, rip the little door from its jamb. A day when the cool brick paths and the garden bursting with peonies seemed so etched in sunlight that you felt like taking a hammer to the glass paperweight on the living room table, releasing all the inhabitants from their snow-covered cottage so they could walk out holding hands and squinting into this larger dome of blue and white. Well, today is just that kind of day. A lot of these poets are very cheerful about, just living in the moment kinds of joy. This is William Stafford. He died a couple years ago, the National Book Award. He was the Library of Congress poet for some years in the 70s. It's called Any Old Morning. Just lying on the couch and being happy, only humming a little, the quiet sound in the head. Trouble is busy elsewhere at the moment. It has so much to do in the world. People who might judge are mostly asleep. They can't monitor you all the time, and sometimes they forget. When dawn finally flows over the hedge, you can get up and get busy. Little corners like this, pieces of heaven left lying around, can be picked up and saved. People won't even see that you have them. They are so light and easy to hide. Later in the day, you can act like all the others. You can shake your head. You can frown. That was really, this is William Stafford. Yeah. Yeah. So when you're lying there and and it's in top, you don't want to get up and still early. It's your special moment. This one makes me laugh, so I had to share it with you. This is Ron Padgett again, called Words from the Front. We don't look as young as we used to, except in dim light, especially in the soft warmth of candlelight, when we say in all sincerity, "You're so cute," and "You're my cutie." Imagine two old people behaving like this. It's enough to make you happy. And British poet named Elaine Feinstein. She's the head of the Royal Society of Literature, which I suppose is cooler than the National Book Award or something because it's British. But anyway, this is called Getting Older. And again, I like this kind of sense of humor that, anyway, The first surprise is I like it. Whatever happens now, some things that used to terrify me have not. I didn't die young, for instance, or lose my only love. My three children never had to run away from home. Don't tell me this gratitude is complacent. We all approach the edge of the same blackness, which for me is silent. Knowing as much sharpens my delight in the January freesias, hot coffee, winter sunlight. So we say, as we lie close on some gentle occasion, every day one from such darkness is a celebration. So think of all the things that could have happened to you that didn't. And this one, Grace Paley, you may have heard her. She was Pulitzer National Book Award, all of those things. She also wrote fiction. You may know her as a fiction writer. But this is kind of sweet. She's with her very old husband at this point, and looks over at him, and he tries to think about the two of them. It's called Hand-Me-Downs. My love rests on the couch in the sweater and bones of old age. I have stopped reading to look at him. I take his hand. I am shawled in my own somewhat wrinkled but still serviceable skin. No one knows what to do with these hand-me-downs. Love them, I suppose. Weren't they worn in and out of dignity by our mothers and our fathers? Even our children someday, in the grip of merciless genes, will wear these garments. May their old lovers greet and touch them then in the bare light of that last beauty. Yep, wearing your wrinkled old garment, you're going to pass it down. And then Wendell Berry, if you were one of the environmental activists in the 70s and 80s, you probably knew Wendell Berry as the person who came up with the idea of like the Buffalo Commons, like move everybody out of the middle third of the country and just let the wild animals have it back because they were losing population in those states anyway. He actually won the National Humanities Medal and the Guggenheim Award for his environmental work, but he's really a very good poet, I think. I got a couple of his, I believe, in here. This one, I'll have to read it to you twice because it's such a convoluted time thing. You'll have to listen to it and think, and then I'll read it to you again and it'll all be clear. It's called They. I see you down there, white-haired among the green leaves, picking the ripe raspberries, and I think, 42 years. We are the you and I who were once the they who we remember. Okay. I see you down there, looking at his wife. I see you down there, white-haired among the green leaves, picking the ripe raspberries, and I think, 42 years. We are the you and I who were once the they whom we remember. So have you ever seen like young people that think we were once them and we were once them looking at them, and yeah. The mystery of time. Billy Collins again. Billy Collins is sub-optimizing here. We all sub-optimize. That is, you can't do what you really want to do, but you look at the choices you've got and you think, okay, that's what I really wanted to do. The one you make the one you have to do be the one you really say you wanted anyway. Sub-optimizing, the psychologists call it. But it's, it's a good device. This is a poem called Consolation. How agreeable it is not to be touring Italy this summer, wandering her cities and ascending her torrid hill towns. How much better to cruise these local familiar streets, fully grasping the meaning of every road sign and billboard and all the sudden hand gestures of my compatriots. There are no abbeys here, no crumbling frescoes or famous domes, and there is no need to memorize a succession of kings or tour the dripping corners of some dungeon. No need to stand around the sarcophagus, see Napoleon's little bed on Elba, or view the bones of some saint under glass. How much better it is to command the simple precinct of home than to be dwarfed by pillar, arch, and basilica. Why hide my head in phrase books and wrinkled maps? Why feed scenery to a hungry, one-eyed camera, eager to eat the world one moment at a time? Instead of slouching in a cafe, ignorant of the word for ice, I will head down to the coffee shop and the waitress I know is Dot. I will slide into the flow of the morning paper, all language barriers down, rivers of idiom running freely, eggs over easy on the way. And after breakfast, I will not have to find someone willing to photograph me with my arm around the owner. I will not puzzle over the bill or record in a journal what I had to eat and how the sun came in the window. It is enough to climb back in the car as if it were the great car of English itself, and sounding my loud vernacular horn, speed off down a road that will never lead to Rome, not even to Venice. Right? You don't have to worry about how to translate things. Ursula Le Guin. Now, if you know her at all, you know of her as a novelist, and she's an outstanding novelist. I think one of the primary modern American novelists. She does write fantasy. On the other hand, she made fantasy into a genre that was respectable because her novels are so good. But she did also write poetry. And this is a poem called In the Borderlands. This part of me, the part of this being that is rock, the part of this body that is star, lately I feel them yearning to go back and be what they were. As we get closer to the border, they whisper sometimes to my soul, so long as we've been away from an order, when will we be whole? Soon enough, my soul replies, you'll shine in star and sleep in stone, when I, who troubled you a while with eyes and grief and wakefulness, am gone. Yeah. Yeah. She was obviously she's writing from a different kind of perspective than a Western Christian or Jewish perspective. She was her father was a social anthropologist at UCLA for years, and she took a lot of anthropology, and most of her novels are fascinating studies of culture. And so, but anyway, I'm getting off on the sidetrack. I just want you to read her. In the Borderlands, the part of this being that is rock, the part of this body that is star, lately I feel them yearning to go back and be what they are. As we get closer to the border, they whisper sometimes to my soul, so long we've been away from order. Oh, when will we be whole? Soon enough, my soul replies, you'll shine in star and sleep in stone, and I, who troubled you a while with eyes and grief and wakefulness, am gone. Yeah, I like that. And this is Wendell Berry again. He's the one who wrote about the day when we were us, and yeah. But this is another one where it gives you a sort of a different perspective twist, and you think it's such a simple poem, but yet it's really so. It really rings true to anybody who's had a person they loved and has lost that person. I think it's called Accept. Now that you have gone, and I am alone and quiet, my contentment would be complete if I did not wish you were here so I could say how good it is, Tanya, to be alone and quiet. Yeah. It's like you're riding along and you say, I could point that out to so-and-so, but yeah. Now this is a poem by A.R. Ammons, National Book Award, Guggenheim, Library of Poets Congress. They're all award winners in this group. He actually is a North Carolina poet, one of the few really great North Carolina poets. We have a lot of poets, and some of them are okay, but he's really very good. It's called In View of the Fact. The people of my time are passing away. My wife is baking for a funeral, a 60-year-old who died suddenly. When the phone rings, and it's Ruth we care so much about in intensive care. It was once weddings that came so thick and fast, and then first babies, such a hullabaloo. Now it's this, that, and the other, and somebody else gone or on the brink. Well, we never thought we would live forever, although we did. And now it looks like we won't. Some of us are losing a leg to diabetes. Some don't know what they went downstairs for. Some know that a hired watchful person is around. Some like to touch the cane tip into something steady. So nice, we have already lost so many. brushed the loss of ourselves. Our address books for so long, a slow scramble, now are palimpsests, scribbles and scratches. Our index cards for Christmases, birthdays, Halloweens drop clean away into sympathies. At the same time, we are getting used to so many leaving. We are hanging on with a grip to the ones left. We are not giving up on the congestive heart failures or the brain tumors, on the nice old men left in empty houses, or on the widows who decide to travel a lot. We think the sun may shine someday when we'll drink wine together and think of what used to be. Until we die, we will remember every single thing, recall every word, love every loss. Then we will, as we must, leave it to others to love. Love that can go brighter and deeper till the very end, gaining strength, getting more precious all the way. Used to be weddings, now one of my favorite, Kay Ryan is one of my favorites. I just really love her stuff. This is, she's talking, it's called Things Shouldn't Be So Hard. And if you listen to this, you'll think she's using it in the sense of things shouldn't be so hard, as in it's hard to get stuff done. But she's also playing around with the notion of things shouldn't be so hard, as in hard to touch, hard to the surface being hard. It's a hard substance. She's playing around with that with the loss of her partner who died. Things shouldn't be so hard. Life should leave deep tracks, ruts where she went out and back to get the mail or move the hose around the yard, where she used to stand before the sink, a worn out place. Beneath her hands, the china knobs rubbed down to white pastilles. The switch she used to feel for in the dark, almost erased. Her things should keep her marks. The passage of a life should show, it should abrade. And when life stops, a certain space, however small, should be less scarred by the grand and damaging parade. Things shouldn't be so hard. Yeah. Poem by, I don't know anything about this guy. I just read some of his stuff and really liked it. His name is Bronislaw Mon. She's a Polish poet who won various awards in European poetry. It's called A Leaf. A leaf, one of the last, parts from a maple branch. It is spinning in the transparent air of October, falls on a heap of others, stops, fades. No one admired its entrancing struggle with the wind, followed its flight. No one will distinguish it now as it lies among other leaves. No one saw what it did. I am the only one. Yeah. Joyce Sutphin, Poet Laureate 2011, called Living in the Body. Body is something you need in order to stay on this planet, and you only get one. And no matter which one you get, it will not be satisfactory. It will not be beautiful enough. It will not be fast enough. It will not keep on for days at a time, but will pull you down into a sleepy swamp and demand apples and coffee and chocolate cake. Body is a thing you have to carry from one day into the next. Always the same eyebrows over the same eyes and the same skin when you look in the mirror, and the same creaky knee when you get up from the floor, and the same wrist under the watch band. The changes you can make are small and costly. Better to leave it as it is. Body is a thing that you have to leave eventually. You know that because you have seen others do it. Others who were once like you, living inside their pile of bones and flesh, smiling at you, loving you, leaning in the doorway, talking to you for hours. And then one day they are gone. No forwarding address. Okay, I'll finish up with when I want to read this of the two that I'm finishing up with is a ringer. I admit it. He's not a contemporary poet. He's a modern American poet, but it's Walt Whitman, who died in 1892. But this is such a great poem. Walt Whitman is just, I mean, you can't overestimate or overstate his value to the American poetry canon. He really invented major American poetry, so he fits in anywhere. He actually wrote this when he was 41. So, you know. This is called Night on the Prairies. Night on the prairies. The supper is over. The fire on the ground burns low. The wearied immigrants sleep wrapped in their blankets. I walk by myself. I stand and look at the stars, which I think now I never realized before. Now I absorb immortality and peace. I admire death and test propositions. How plenteous, how spiritual, how resume. The same old man and soul, the same old aspirations, and the same content. I was thinking the day most splendid till I saw what the not day exhibited. I was thinking this globe enough until there sprang out so noiseless around me myriads of other globes. Now, while the great thoughts of space and eternity fill me, I will measure myself by them. And now, touched with the lives of other globes, arrived as far along as those of Earth, or waiting to arrive, or passed further on than those of Earth, I henceforth no more ignore them than I ignore my own life, or the lives of the Earth arrived as far as mine, or waiting to arrive. Oh, I see now that life cannot exhibit all to me as the day cannot. I see that I am to wait for what will be exhibited by death. And yeah, you have to think about that one. He thought day was pretty good until he saw night. And he thinks, wow. All right, this is the one I'll end on. Get my time there. It's by William Stafford, who is, again, poet, one of these great award-winning poets, who is now our age and thinking about these things. He says, you reading this, be ready. So if you hearing this, be ready too. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor? What scent of old wood hovers? What softened sound from outside fills the air? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this poem, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room, when you turn around? The poets always know. Okay. Thank you for coming and letting me read poetry. I love reading poetry.